what's the password this week?
Reality, well, it's the inverse. It might be rain.
I may be responsible. In France, we say that if you sing out of tune, it rains. So I may be at fault here. Okay, yeah. And do you have questions?
Yeah. That's like Moses, that was cool. Hi, Francis. I have a question about a state again. So in the Indian tradition, we hear a lot about the state of samadhi or samadhi. And my question is, it's a state, right?
Yeah. I guess samadhi means kind of means state.
Yeah. And so if you experience that state, it has a beginning and an end, just like all states. So is it really important?
No.
No.
Anything which has a beginning and an end is not important.
Yeah.
Now, you may have an experience that seems to have a beginning and an end, but that reveals to you a reality which has no beginning and no end. In which case, the experience of this reality which has no beginning and no end is important.
And what would you call that? Would you call that a state that you get into?
No. If you will, all states have a background. The background of the state is not a state because it extends beyond all states and between all states. The analogy is the one I made last week. If you have a floor which is covered with rugs, and then there are empty spaces with no rugs, but there are also like rectangles so you could say that's a rug because it has borders. But in fact, that's a mistake because the floor has no borders because it extends under the rugs, right? So the rugs don't limit the floor. So in this metaphor, the unlimited floor stands for consciousness. And the rugs stands for phenomenal states. But even what we call phenomenal states, what are they made of? What are the bricks, the building blocks they are made of? Any state experienced by human mind is a succession of microstates, if you will, each microstate being either a bodily sensation, an external sense perception, or a thought. It's just that with memory in hindsight, we see an assembly of states, of microstates, if you will, as being a state. But in fact, it's a multiplicity of microstates. Even a thought itself is a multiplicity of instantaneous mentations. The reason for that is that the way the nature works is not continuous. It's by increments, by discrete, we would say. It's discrete. In hindsight, it looks like one movie, but if you look at the movie, it's a succession of snapshots. So, between each of those microstates, even, there is a background, the background that perceives them. That's the floor, if you will. But in hindsight, we don't remember the microstates. We remember what happened over a certain period of states. That's a bigger state. And there are even bigger states. You go on a vacation, that's a state too. You see? That you consider it, what you call a state is in the eyes of the beholder. You see? And you can look at your life between birth and death as a big state also, which is an aggregate of many states. But what all these states have in common is that they are phenomenal, meaning they have phenomenal quality, objective quality, such as size, color, shape, borders.
Intensity.
But
it's very difficult for me to be able to distinguish between those traits that are characteristics of states, and then I'm trying to very, very attentively experience the borderless state, or the just consciousness itself. But it seems to me, it is just nothing. There is.
Right. It is nothing objective.
Yeah.
Well, are you telling me there is no consciousness?
No, I'm not saying that. But there's not. I can't cling to anything.
Right. Beautiful. Exactly. At some point, you stop trying to cling to it because you understand that you can't, with the mind, cling to it.
Yeah. It feels like grabbing at smoke or something. Like it's impossible.
You cannot grab it with the mind.
Yeah.
You can only be grabbed by it. You cannot grab it. You can be grabbed by it.
Yeah.
When you experience a moment of understanding, a moment of love, a moment of beauty, you are grabbed by it. So, if the question is, how can I be grabbed by it more often? All you have to do is to be available. If you are busy, you are closed for business. You see? Meister Eckhart, in one of his sermons, says the human mind is like a house. And God wants always to visit us, but God is very polite. I mean, I'm a little paraphrasing what Eckhart says, but that's the gist of it. God is very polite, and if we have visitors, it stays outside. But as soon as they leave, he enters. So the visitors are anything else than consciousness. So it is that explains the meditation exercise we did, which is simply to be this welcoming of all objective appearances with benevolent indifference. It's a way to make ourselves available. And when God enters, it has the perfume of the invisible. God is too bright to be seen by the mind eyes. It just blinds it. But the perfume is there. The perfume is the experience of happiness and peace. Now you can have the perfume also in the presence of objects, you see. All that matters is our availability for it. What creates this availability is when we understand that the peace and the happiness we are seeking cannot be found in the world of objects, you see, in the phenomena, in the world of phenomena. So when we understand that, this understanding creates a natural shift of interest away from the places where we now know from experience and from understanding we cannot find that which we are looking for, to the unknown direction. But the unknown direction, the mind cannot go there. So and then the mind becomes silent in a sense. Having understood he cannot go there. And then we are visited. And this visit, the visitor leaves behind her perfume.
Thank you, Francis.
Okay, a few questions online. There is a question that I had left unanswered from Caitlin. I've been contemplating the concept of alone and aloneness. If there is only one reality, this necessarily implies that I, as consciousness, am completely alone, an absolute singularity. There is incredible freedom and peace in knowing this truth of solitude. However, there are times I fall victim to the illusion of being a separate entity, and from a false understanding of aloneness, I reach into external world in the hopes that this void can be tamed by some object, some other. Of course, I quickly discover again and again that there is no cure for reality. Nothing can ever satisfy. Life is hell-bent on revealing to me the ever-present truth that I alone am. There is both immense gratitude for this wisdom as well as sweet sadness. I have an image in mind of consciousness behaving like an only child who dreams up imaginary friends to play with. Does consciousness play in this way, creating the world of Maya for fun, for friends, in order to escape or forget its aloneness? Yes, but not in order to escape. In order to celebrate it, in order to, it's an overflow, the world it creates is an overflow of its happiness. So the world is not created as a sense of lack, but on the contrary, just the opposite, as an overflow of plenitude. And of course it's for fun, yes, it's a celebration. The creation is a celebration that celebrates the Creator. Is there an innocent desire to play and interact with something other than itself? Yes, that's an innocent desire. And even in that sense, in your ignorance is an innocent desire originally to play the game by forgetting our true nature, and then being found again, finding it again. I was lost, and I am found. Or is consciousness perfectly satisfied in its aloneness, and it is only, yes, it is perfectly satisfied in its aloneness. The creation, again, I've answered already, doesn't come out of sense of lack, but out of sense of overflowing joy. And it is only the false sense of me that desires to be something other than alone. Yes, there are two ways to desire to be something else than alone. There is the ignorant way, and there is the other way. In the ignorant way, I feel I am a fragment. And as a result, I experience a sense of lack. In other words, misery. And I imagine that something else is missing. It can be money, it can be health, it can be youth, but it can be also a partner, or it can be friends, or it can be a dog, whatever. But I feel that in order to escape this unbearable sense of lack and misery, I need this external object. Now, the other desire for company is very different. It comes not from a sense of lack, but it comes from our fullness. In other words, nothing is missing in consciousness. We are not missing anything because we are happiness itself. But an innocent desire may come up along the lines, it would be nice if. It would be nice if I meet a friend. It would be nice if I met a partner. It would be nice if we open a bottle of champagne. It would be nice, you see. But if it doesn't happen, our happiness is not hostage of the occurrence of the fulfillment of the desire. That's a big difference. This desire doesn't come from misery, just the opposite. It comes from joy. Especially, for instance, the desire to share. We understand that, or sometimes we have someone we love, and he or she is not there. And there is something beautiful. For example, we watch a very nice movie, you see, and we say, "Oh, I wish you were here." And then we go on the cell phone and we send a text, "Oh, how was this movie?" So hoping that it's not an instantaneous, it's a time-delayed sharing. When we were watching the movie, we were perfectly happy. There was no sense of lack, and this sharing of it doesn't come from a sense of lack. You see, it comes from some different place. The desire to share. And I think true friendship and also true relationships between partners is when it comes from this desire to share our happiness. Because after all, if you want to share your misery, it's not very loving. We cannot call that love, right? Any questions here? It's going to be a short satsang. Luciana, I'm quite new to your teaching. Thank you very much for making I was touched by one of your dialogues. Please, if you could clarify some points. You say that happenings or miracles are denied if they are claimed by our separate self. I say that, yeah, in most cases. You say this is so even when they have been momentarily recognized. I'm lost, because she asks, what do you mean by this temporary recognition? I don't see what she's alluding to. Can anybody help? You have any idea? You say that happenings or miracles are denied if they are claimed by our separate self. In most cases, yes. I would qualify it a little bit in the opposite. If they are claimed by our true self, they are going to happen. That's the point. If they are claimed by our true self, they are going to happen. If they are claimed by our separate self, in most cases they won't happen, but if they happen, watch out. You say this is so when they have been momentarily recognized. I don't know what you mean by momentarily recognized. Because the miracle cannot be recognized before it happens. It can be recognized only after it happens, as such as a miracle. And then, so if they are denied before they happen, they are not going to happen, and they are not going to be recognized. I don't see what you're driving at. Perhaps if you are listening, you can send an online on the chat. You can refine or say, ask the question in a different manner. I keep reading anyway, perhaps. Then you also say that miracles can only deny temporarily anyway. Can you clarify this point, please? No. What I say, what I think you are alluding to is something I may have said, that when a desire is impersonal, it's going to materialize. But it is not necessarily going to materialize immediately. However, when it materializes, it will have this special touch of God. You see? I'm going to tell you a personal story. I was in the United States. It's how I got my green card. I was in the United States. I spent 5 years in the United States as a French diplomat, which gives you zero right to remain in the United States. And I wanted to remain in the United States, and the French government, after some point, wanted to transfer me to a different country. And then I said, no, thank you, and I took an early retirement. But how do I stay in this country? So you see, I needed to find some way, and the way was to find someone who would hire me for a job that would qualify according to the requirement of the Department of Labor here. And I didn't know too many people that could hire me, but I had this friend. He was a CEO of a major bank. I'm not going to give any more information, but so I gave him a call. I explained to him my problem, and I say, since in your line of work you are in touch, in contact with a lot of entrepreneurs and so on, and he was French originally, and since you know my background, if you find someone who might be interested in my resume, please tell me. And then he goes, well, I'm hiring you. I say, yeah, but for the kind, at the time there was, you can apply as an exec, as a white collar or as a blue collar, basically. And I say, yeah, but you have to hire me as a white collar. He says, of course. And then I said, yes, but you have to pay me. He said, of course. So not only did I get my green card, but I got it also on a silver plate, you see, of the salary for which I must confess I didn't work much because he was kind enough to allow for me to work from my house and to write a market study of sorts that was not too difficult. Anyway, so the point is that not only did the universe provide me with a green card, but also to show off, because God, being a woman, loved to to show off, gave me, in addition, a sensible amount of money. And over an extended period of time. So that was very nice, and that was the sign. And why was I staying in the United States? Originally because my teacher had told me to go there. So my desire to stay there was totally impersonal, or I must say I loved being in the United States. So there was ultimately an impersonal element, because it's not against the law to do something impersonal and to love it at the same time. So that's how I became a citizen here, and that's a beautiful story of miracles happen. And I must say, yes. And regarding the fact that miracles are delayed, I had before I called this friend, I had investigated other possibilities. I had another acquaintance who had a job, but it was in the desert here. I mean, in the valley somewhere between Fresno and Los Angeles, in the middle of nowhere. I don't remember the name of the place, so I said, no, I'm going to go. So in other words, you have to investigate also. I mean, I may have taken this situation if no different opportunity had. Another form of serendipity happened when I applied to come to the United States with the French government. I had asked for I wanted to go to San Francisco. I don't know why, because San Francisco is too much like Shropshire. And South California is much better. But at the time I was a stupid French, I didn't know much about, and so I wanted to go to San Francisco. So I applied for a position, a diplomatic position in San Francisco, And it didn't work. Later on, I said, okay, if I cannot have San Francisco, I go for Los Angeles. But there was some guy in place in this position in Los Angeles. And I paid him a visit, during one of my trips. And he said, well, of course you can come, but I don't intend to retire soon, so either you come in 5 years when I retire, or over my dead body. So I came back to Bordeaux, and I received a call a few months, 1 month later, from my boss in Paris, and he says, I have 2 bad news and 1 good news. Now, the first bad news is that your colleague in Los Angeles just passed away. The second bad news is that I knew that you had applied for his position in Los Angeles, but the president, it was President Mitterrand at the time, the president has had someone in mind. So it's not going to be that. But when the president visited San Francisco, he talked to the general counsel here, who persuaded him to create a position like yours, and your resume fits perfectly. So we are offering you San Francisco. So that's how I came, and that was my original desire. I must say that a few years before, 2 years before, I had been offered Chicago, and I'm afraid to disappoint our friend in the Midwest. I went to Chicago in the summer, and the sky over there was like between blue and gray. It was terribly hot and humid. And then they told me about the winters. Then I went back to France and waited a little. So that's for the... So she goes on. I am, I'm milking it because we don't have too many questions. Then she says, sorry, I do realize I may fail to separate the point of view of universal consciousness and that of the person. But from the point of view of universal consciousness, are there no miracle, or is everything a miracle? Everything is a miracle. I mean, the fact that there is something rather than nothing, I mean, in itself, it's a miracle of all miracles. We fail to see it like that. We have been invited to an extraordinary miracle. I mean, everything around us, it's so extraordinary. I mean, we are just jaded. We are blasé. We are jaded, because at the moment, at every moment, I mean, we have lost. Look at a newborn child, and for him, that's a permanent miracle. You give him this color object, or the initiation to ice cream of a baby. I mean, with my children, I love to do this initiation. Then you give the spoon. And first they don't know what it is. They think it's carrot puree, So you give the spoon, and then they have a glimpse. They have a glimpse, And the response to the glimpse is yeah. So from the point of view of universal consciousness, everything is a miracle. But there is even more. That from the point of view of universal consciousness is a miracle to itself. You say, wow! Constantly at all with itself, you know. I mean, Trump is nothing compared to that. I hope I have not offended anybody. Okay. Yelena. Last week, after one of the satsangs, I felt a sense of lack, tried to investigate it, asked who is me that feels it, and I could not find me. It was just emptiness. Since then, nothing changed at all. Same world around me, thoughts and sensations flow through, but no me. It feels like light and empty. I don't feel like the world is in me, rather there is no me. I don't feel like universal consciousness, though, rather just perceptions flow. Can you please comment on it? It's a good start. It's not complete, but it's a good start. Make sure you stay there with this understanding and see how it matures. Okay, there is is Liana. I was very moved by one of your meditations available online. You were talking about being like a mirror. That has stayed with me. I've seen you only once at your last free Sunday satsang. In your presence, that feeling came in. Can you please say more about being like a mirror? Feels to me like you are going for seconds. We are consciousness, that which perceives. And consciousness is invisible. Because if it were visible, it would have some qualities of objects such as, I don't know, color, shape, etc. But if it had a shape or a color or an objective quality of its own, it couldn't perceive all the objective qualities that appear in the perceptions. Just as a mirror, if it had a color, couldn't faithfully reflect all the colors of the objects that are placed in front of it. So in that sense, consciousness is like a mirror. But the mirror is limited, it has a frame. And that's why, by looking at it, we know it's a mirror. But if a mirror were perfect, with no frame at all, and we don't know there is a mirror because we have not bumped into it, it would feel that there is a world out there on the other side. I think that's why the mirrors have always been associated with spiritual things, magical mirrors. It's because of this quality of that makes them a little bit consciousness-like, at least in a metaphorical way. Okay, that's it. We have exhausted all questions online. Any questions here?
In the yoga, it seemed like it was really, really clear to me that there was no need for me anywhere. And in the hours since then, I've noticed that there's sort of a me-ing going on. There's like I kind of go shift more me and then a little less me. And the me seems like sensations and maybe like a pretty cloud or something, I don't know exactly.
Yeah, but all of that is perceived.
Yeah. But somehow it seems like it's the catcher. It wants to hold it.
Yeah.
It says, no, it's me. I got it.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's fighting for its survival, because once you have seen that you are the perceiver, and therefore anything which is perceived is a very poor candidate for the me office.
Yeah.
All the candidates get dismissed. We have to address this issue both intellectually on a rational level, which we do often here, but then also at this more, at the gut level, if you will, at the feeling level.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to clarify the situation also on that level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels definitely like it's kind of here, this thing.
What is important to understand is that the goal is not to eliminate any bodily sensations that pretend to be me.
Mm-hmm.
It's to simply see that they are not me. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
And then leave them alone. Then the next moment, they come back and pretend to be you, and then you do the same. So it's like the used vacuum cleaner salesperson who keeps showing up at your door. If you say no, thanks you, I have already won. I've already won me, right? So I have already a vacuum cleaner who works perfectly, thank you, and I bought it new. After a while, it stops showing up at your door.
Thank you.
Last week I asked you about artistic inspiration. And
About what?
Art inspiration, like artistic inspiration. I was just wondering, you said there's a natural inspiration that comes when you don't believe that you're separate. And it seems to me like when I'm trying to create something, like on the piano or a story or a poem, that sometimes it really kind of cooks and sometimes it doesn't. So, and it doesn't necessarily seem to be related to ignorance. I'm not sure though. So I'm just wondering, it's about openness, but also kind of following the muse that seems to be there
Yes.
sometimes.
Yes. If we take, for instance, the job of the actor, first, you have to be inspired by the text. In other words, the text has to be inspiring. Right? If you are not inspired, you cannot be a good servant of the text. You may not be inspired because the text is not interesting, is not good, or you may not be inspired for other reasons. For instance, I love Dirty Rotten Scoundrel. It makes me laugh a lot. I know there are friends here. They say, well, that's another slapstick comedy. They are not inspired. You see? So, so if you're an artist, an actor, and you have to be the servant of a text, the first condition is to be inspired. Same thing for a musician. You have to be inspired. You need to have the skills, of course. And then, what I mean, you need to be inspired first, means you have to love it. You have to be enthusiastic about sharing it. You know, it's like, it has to be like a piece of candy you want to share with the kids. You see? And then, also a very important precondition is to understand it. And there are texts that are very deep. So, because there are many levels on which it can be understood. Take Shakespeare, for instance. A satirical play by Shakespeare can be understood at very level, different level. And so there is a higher level, a metaphysical level. So when we understand it on that level, then we really, it becomes something else. You know, it becomes really art. And then, what is important is the transparency. It is very different from casting in Hollywood. They find an actor who looks like, you know, who looks like Nixon, or, I mean, that's hard to find, but who looks like Dick. They have found one like that? Okay, so but that's a different way. It's not acting, you know. Or a guy who is naturally grumpy, so he will be grumpy in the movie, perfect. But in the theater, it's different. It's a transparency that matters, so that you can play all characters, ideally. And in order to play all characters, you need to be devoid as much as possible of a personal character. I remember giving you this text on Shakespeare, right? You read a beautiful text by, someone remembers? For those who haven't read it. It's a text by the South American famous writer.
Borges, I think, was it?
Borges, eh? Yeah. By Borges. And it's about Shakespeare, but we don't know. He talks about Shakespeare. You can find it online. It's short. It's like 2-3 pages. It's very beautiful. And in order to be the perfect actor, to have this transparency, you need to be devoid of any specific attachment. So then you can be like the mirror, transparent, and then you can perfectly reflect the character that was intended by the playwright. And also, I mean, I forgot to mention, yes, I mentioned the first prerequisite, I mentioned it, that it is, you have to understand the text, but you have to understand it at a deep level. First, you have to understand it in relation with the totality of the play. Because sometimes actors, they have a monologue, they understand the monologue very, very, very nice. But the monologue stands in connection to the totality, so you need to have this overarching global view, right, of the play. So I don't know why I'm saying that, but the artistic interpretation, the first inspiration is the enthusiasm you have that gives you the desire to be the servant of the text. But then the inspiration comes in the moment, because everything is slightly different. That's the beauty of theater. I was listening this morning actually to a French actor who was being interviewed, and he was saying that every night he was looking forward of something different, that something different would happen. He would say, actually, I come to the theater ahead of time. I love to be behind the curtain and to see the people putting things in place, talking with them, to be in the atmosphere, because it's different every day. You see, so to be open to the now. And finally, regarding, because I know you are an actor, so I'm addressing in a more specific way this kind of performing art. What is called the presence of an actor, talking about theater, is a combination of what I've just said. In other words, if you don't understand your text at a deep level, you cannot have presence. You cannot understand the connection of your monologue with the rest of the play, and you cannot. Presence requires a lot of ingredients. But the final ingredients it requires is this deep relaxation that you need to have as you communicate with your audience. In other words, you need not to feel separate from them. You need to feel they are part of you, you're part of them. You need to feel the globality, you need to feel the love. You need to feel that that your body, in a sense, expands to the entire whole. And there are artists who have that, unfortunately, mostly only on stage. That's why they enjoy being on stage, but then when they're in their life, they shrink back into their shell, you see. The idea is to have that everywhere in your life, and then you will have it also on stage, right? The feeling I had when he was alive, I loved to listen to Isaac Stern, the violinist, because he had this quality on stage of being like I felt like my grandfather, and the audience, we are the grandchildren, and he's going to tell us a story with his violin. You see, because he was so relaxed. He was, yeah, Daddy, tell us a story, and then, yes, I'm going to tell you a story that is very sad, and there would be this adagio. And then there is this story which is really funny, or this story which is dancing, and that was so beautiful, the way he would be there, no stress at all, great relaxation, Some note was out of tune, but fuck the critic, Beautiful.
Francis?
Yes? Yes, that's Jorge Luis Borges on Shakespeare. Yeah.
Here I am. Last week you said that we limit God by thinking he's all good. I think is what you said, something like that. That why would we limit God and just think he's just that?
I don't think I said that.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
I don't remember what I said, but I'm afraid you are distorting whatever it is that I have said.
Anybody remember that but me? I've been thinking about it for days.
I'm afraid you're alone in your...
Well, I guess that blows that question, but You don't, seriously, you don't remember saying anything like that God, why would we limit God?
I feel like I'm being deposed.
No, I'm trying to understand. Seriously, I'm trying to understand. But you said
Please
something.
answer the question by yes or no.
Well, why would we limit God? Does that ring a bell?
What?
Why would we limit God?
Yes,
Limit
we
consciousness?
should. God is unlimited, but I never said that God was not good. God is absolute good. But with our human eyes, we may not see it. But ultimately, for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, they will see it and they will hear it.
So as consciousness, this little fraction of it or whatever, that we should also be that. And that seems...
What?
God is...
I never said that as
presence,
consciousness we are bad.
but it's all
I
good.
said from ignorance, from the vantage point of ignorance, we see good and evil.
Mm-hmm. That we see good and evil, but as consciousness, it's all good.
Yes.
Then is this little tiny spark of that, there's a possibility of being all good ourselves, or that we have that responsibility or something.
What do you call ourselves?
Yeah, exactly. But when we, as consciousness, living as consciousness to, I don't know how to say it other than the best of our ability, but that just seems impossible.
What seems impossible?
To be all good.
Define good.
Well, I'm trying to understand what you were saying is that God is, or consciousness is, presence is, reality is, all good, perfect, all good.
It is a good that has no opposite.
So that everything we see and are and perceive is also that then.
Yes.
If we could see from that, always from that place,
Mm-hmm.
whatever happens is all good.
If you are open to this possibility, well, first, what we find when we are in ignorance, what we find to be bad, evil, is death.
I'm just talking about just pretty normal things. It doesn't have to be that exotic. Don't have to go that far. Just little simple things.
Well, so then let's take another example. Give me an example of something bad.
Thinking, having judgmental thoughts about myself and others.
Yeah, so
That seems bad. That doesn't seem like all good. It's like, I wish I didn't do that.
well,
Well,
everybody
stop it, huh?
everybody makes mistakes. It's a mistake. When we do that, it's because we are making a fundamental mistake, which is to believe to be a separate person. That's a big mistake. But because we condone it, because we like it, we there is a contradiction. Then we don't like the consequences, the effect of it, especially when others judge us. We don't like it, but we suffer only because we believe to be a separate person. We don't suffer really when we judge others, because it's a free lunch to judge others. We suffer when others judge us. Because when you say, I suffer if I judge others, to me that's BS. I can understand that you suffer when you judge yourself.
Well, because those things seem to just pop up so quickly, and it's like, oh, there it is again. I mean, it's so...
Yeah, but then you judge yourself for judging others.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because
it's judgment.
Jesus said, don't judge others. I'm not here to be your judge. So the point is, I don't know what the point is.
That it's easy, from the point for me is that it's so easy to just fall into this not good category so much quicker than to be in, quote, the all good category.
It's always
if that's
because,
what we really are.
But who is falling into this category?
This pathetic thing over here.
That's your mistake. Who is there to fall into that category? You are so attached to believing to be this separate consciousness that you judge the separate consciousness for believing to be a separate consciousness, whereas in fact it's consciousness itself, which is not separate, who wants to play the game of being separate. So all I can say you is, if you like it, keep it. If you don't like it, stop it. That's all I can say. Your consciousness...
Yeah. Yes, I would like to just stop it. Yeah, that's what I said a few minutes ago. Yeah, that's the only thing that seems
see
possible.
that you don't
just stop it.
See that you don't stop it because you like it. And then you pretend not to like it. But you're pretending not to like it. There is someone who doesn't like it. And the someone who doesn't like it is precisely that which you don't like. So you see what I mean? It's a kind of a catch-22 situation.
What did you say? The someone who doesn't like it is what you don't like? Is that what, would you repeat that?
I'm lost now.
Me too.
But I was correct when I said it, so you can take a look at the recordings. I am on record being deposed, so you it's always, we make only one mistake. To believe to be a man, to believe to be a woman, to believe to be a human body. I mean, stop it. Stop it. And if you don't want to stop it. There is another prerequisite, which is stop it. On YouTube, it's shorter, by Bob Newhart. So, video Stop It by Bob Newhart. That's also another prerequisite, very important. It kind of summarizes everything I said here in a much shorter way. So, yeah. 6 minutes. Yeah. Enlightenment in 6 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. Regarding the good and evil, there was this guy, Leibniz. He was the inventor of calculus. And he was also a philosopher. And he said something. Oh yeah? Congratulations. Where was I? Yeah, so this Leibniz guy, he was a philosopher, and he had things right. He said, the world basically, oh yes, he said, we live in the best possible world. In the best possible world. And Voltaire wrote a book which was in fact a pamphlet against him called Candide. Now, you have to know that one of the reasons why he wrote that, I mean, he never said that, but we know that there was this lady who was a lover of Voltaire. But then she went with Leibniz. So as a result, that's the genesis of Candide by Voltaire. And but then Leibniz was a very, very, very intelligent man, and he kind of expressed what he meant by the best of all possible worlds. And he said something like, it's a very, the mathematician and the physicist will appreciate that. He said something like, no, I'm going to explain a little bit. You can have two extremes when you create a world, right? You have multiple choices, a lot of choices. And you have two extremes. In one, it's a total chaos, right? In this total chaos, it's not fun. Right? Because there is nothing you can see, you can watch. Imagine a soup. You see, a soup. On the other extreme, you have something in which there is no diversity. In the soup, there are a lot of things. It's total diversity. In the other extreme, there is no diversity, but there is no diversity also that, like the Soviet Union, no choice, right? Only one type of toilet paper. So it's not fun either. So between these two extremes of no diversity whatsoever or absolute diversity, which are not fun, there must be an optimum between the two. And the idea of Leibniz was God, that here is this optimum. It's a perfect balance between diversity and chaos. Well, just for food of thought about the world being bad. My version of it is that the world is almost perfect, but there is a big mistake he made, which are the mosquitoes, and also garlic and onion. But you know, so yeah, okay, we are through here. But now you know all the details about God and about the world, right? I've disclosed things, classified information.
Just an information, the word optimus came from thymus. Thymus is the gland is involved in the heart. Thymus. Optimus came from thymus. Yes, in Latin.
You sure?
Sure. The gland of the thymus, optimus, thymus, is the gland of the heart. In the child, the gland is bigger than the heart. Yes. That's it. Thank you. Just it.
It's weird because thymus is written Thy, right? And usually in semantics, this thing.
In Latin, timus, optimus, timus is the same radical in Latin.
Huh? Thymus sounds Greek to me, yes, because it sounds like a theta.
Yes.
Yes, that's also another thing that I'm not sure I buy that. Huh?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
It reminds me, this approximative etymology. It reminds me when I was in San Francisco. There was a period when the feminists, they said we shouldn't say his story, we should say her story. I'm not joking, huh? I'm not joking. That tells you a lot about the level of education at Berkeley.
Berkeley.
So I think of like the veil on the wedding dress of a beautiful bride.
What?
A veil on the wedding dress of a beautiful bride.
You
When I
little-
think of my native city, San Francisco, the fog across the city.
Oh, yes, okay, yeah. Do you live in the avenues?
No, I do not. I live in Santa Cruz, son. But you did. She's from the avenues.
It's cool there. I lived in Twin Peaks for a while. I arrived there in October. I have a beautiful view. I could see the three bridges. Then I spent the next 11 months in the fog.
She hides. The beauty hides.
Yes. Okay. We are not serious, but in the absence of question, I have to make do.